All right, Ms. Pitlick, you told me that I could write a paper on naturalism to get a grade in humanities. Well, I got really frustrated with it, and I decided to do it the only way I can do it fast and knew how to do it really at the time. So I'm going to make a video of our little story on naturalism. And I started off with this nice little literary background, but I think we're going to move somewhere where we can really get into naturalism. Okay? Can you do that?
What?
That's because we faded it.
You want me to sing or something?
All right, here we are at Donutland on Mount Vernon Road, the literary mecca of Cedar Rapids, where I thought it best to explain my project, or to do my project. What I'm going to do is, first of all, we're going to tell a fable, and then we're going to retell the fable 3 times to go with each movement: romanticism, realism, and naturalism. And here we have our guest literarian, Jason Snell, who's going to tell the fable first.
All right, the fable goes.
Okay, can we just do that again? Sorry.
What?
Do it one more time. One more time.
What?
Just begin. Okay, here we are at Donutland on Mount Vernon Road, Cedar Rapids, the literary mecca of Cedar Rapids, and where I thought it best to do my project on naturalism. What my idea was we're going to tell a fable, and then we're going to retell it 3 times for each movement: romanticism, realism, and naturalism. And first, we have our guest literarist, you might say Jason Snell, who's going to tell us the fable first.
Oh, no, I hit the road, Jack. Don't you come back?
I want to try to handle it. Okay, here we are at Donutland on Mount Vernon Road, the literary mecca of Cedar Rapids, where I thought it best to do my project on naturalism. And what we're going to do is we're going to tell a fable, an original fable, and then we're going to retell it 3 times to go with each of the 3 movements: romanticism, realism, and naturalism. We're going to change it to fit each movement. And here to tell us the fable is our guest literarist, Jason Snell.
The fable goes. Ready?
I'm ready.
Are you filming?
Yes.
Okay. The fable goes, there's this little girl who lives in a log cabin with her mother. And one day she decides to go out for a walk. And as she's leaving, her mother says, "Watch out for snakes." And so the little girl asks, "Well, how will I know what a snake is?" And the mom says, "Well, they slither and they make an S shape." And so the little girl nodded and ran out the door. Then she ran through the forest and started going up a hill, which was really rocky. And she kept going and going, and it got a little bit colder. Then she came to a point where there were a lot of rocks and a lot of possibilities for a snake to jump out. And that's just what happened. A snake slithered out from under a rock, and she looked down at it, but it wasn't in an S shape, it was in a backwards S shape. And so she looked at it, and she was just bewildered. And she looked at it and said, "Wait a minute, that's backwards, that can't be a snake. No, that's not a snake." And as she was saying this, the snake got closer and closer, and she was just staring at it, and it bit her on the ankle, and she died. So the moral of this fable is, don't get hooked up on little technicalities.
Oh, get that off me. Hey, you.
Okay, the romantic basically started in America when America. Okay, first the romantic started in America right about the time of the Revolutionary War. America was breaking away from Britain. Population growth was increasing, and people were breaking away from the traditional Puritan values of that time. And since the 18th century, sensitive minds became the new friends, looking to the ideals of Locke and Newton and Pope. The romantic writer emerged. Some of those were Thoreau and Longfellow, and a guy by the name of Emerson who wrote "Youth is Romantic." Here's where our fable begins.
Ready?
I want you to be able to get my shirt in this too.
Okay, I will. Go.
It might be in there.
I remember the day of summer, like it crept up behind me. The smell of her on her cloak. My poor daughter. I am but a humble mother who lives in a humble cabin by the babbling brook. For one summer day, I sent my peaceful daughter, as peaceful and as virgin as a pink summer flower, out on the path to fetch some water from the brook. I told her, "Fairest love, be careful, for you are virgin to the world. Be careful of the beasts and of the birds." But yea, I sent her anyway, knowing I heard her scream from beyond the hills, and I ran. I ran as the wind, as the trees blew. I noticed above me the sun shining, and the dirt path underneath me. I came over the hill. There she doth lay, fain wad lie down, bitten by a snake. She lie there, dead. And I ask why? Why does this happen? I curse the beast. I cursed all of them. And I ask myself why? The path that the babe played on moments before was the same path now doused in blood and anger. And the cloak that I reaped was the same cloak that covered her cold body. My fire doth burn. I remember the day as if it were stuck. All right, the realism movement is the next movement. It was an answer to romanticism. Realist writers thought that romantic writers were way far off out of space, too story-like, too fairy tale-like. And so realism came into play right around the time that America became industrialized, when inventions like the napkin holder and marketed cigarettes, things like that, things that made life easier, but also came with that big business. Realist writers center around the tragic characters, they came from poverty-stricken backgrounds or poor homes or what have you. And it really told, the main thing that it really told was that society was turning bad. And such writers as Mark Twain, Steinbeck, were writers that emerged from this era. And what realism is to show the wrongs of society and their characters and how they struggle through it. And a lot of internal conflict within the character. From her moonlight perch on the riverboat, Squeak peers over the crates aligned on the big boss man's ship, and she sees the 4 men there and the crime about to take place. For the big boss man doesn't like stowaways, and the slave family that had just been discovered was in real trouble. She hears the shot as they lay on the bow of the boat, and she lets out a squeak. She knows she's discovered. The only thing she can do now is run. It's important to get away. So she runs down the gangplank and into the meadow, and she hears them behind her. The lynch mob are coming for her. She turns the corner, and from around the tree there stands the ogre, the instigator of the crime, the boss man. As he puffs on her cigar, he tells her that she is now his, knowing full well that she has no place to go and no one will see her missing. To keep her quiet, the only way is to make her a servant to the big boss man. And knowing full well that she would become the youth of America, the well-educated, and to have a family now that's seething with dirt and deceit and corruption. She has a choice. Her internal fires burn as she looks and sees a getaway, or she sees the path back to the ship. She has her decision. She darts across the field and onto the path, and she hides behind the boulder. She can hear them running through the fields. The dogs are barking. And then she feels the big hands grab her and pull her over the rock. She has nowhere to go. She knows that she will be his, and there's no chance of even finding her mother, the mother that left her long ago. She is weak, for she hasn't eaten in 4 days. She gives in. But just as her body bends like a wreath in the wind, and she knows she is captive, a serpent, an almighty serpent, sinks his fangs into the boss man's leg. She is free at last to roam around the woods as she did in her childhood. Free from society, free from the big buildings, free from the cigarette smoke. Free. That was weird.
Oh.
I guess I wanted to take a break in our metamorphosis to tell you how many realities are going on in this mecca, Donutland. Okay, now we come to the final part of the final interpretation on naturalism. I think it was Thoreau who said, build castles in the sky, now put foundations under them. For the clothes we do, naturalism. Every good project has to have a Thoreau quote. As I sit by the warm fire, which is actually a furnace, warding off the cold with my hot chocolate, I'm ready to talk about naturalism, which was the answer to realism. Naturalism had basically two ideals. One is that man, no matter whether you're a prince or a pauper, it all comes out the same in the end. It doesn't matter. And two, man, no matter how strong or how brave, no matter what, cannot overcome the almighty, the mysterious, the wonderful, the wrathful Mother Nature.
Oh.
Okay, good King Wenceslas knew his favorite thing in the whole wide world was to count his riches that he reaped from the land and the peasants that he surveyed. He knew that he was the master of all the land that he surveyed, and he basked in this feeling. But alas, it fell not good with his daughter, the princess, who saw the senseless torture that the peasants went through, and the beatings, the murders, but most of all, the forest, the cutting down of the forest that was the only peasants' homes, the only homes that they knew, the homes of the debtors. The forest was their only protection. So one night, at midnight, Princess Penelope, gets up, and out the door she runs from the palace walls. Seeing this from his balcony, King Wenceslas runs after her. He will not have this in his house. He will not have this such disobedience. He is not used to this. On horseback, with a guide, he trails after. Just as this happens, the worst storm comes in off the coast. Stop. King Stuart, his favorite thing in the whole world was to sit in his counting room and bask over the riches that he had collected and reaped from the peasants of his land, the land that he knew he was in control of. All he surveyed, the master of such, but he did so through corruption and greed. This fell not good with his daughter, the Princess Penelope, who knew of her father's evil deeds. But most of all, the cutting down for commerce of the forest, the great forest that housed the debtors and the peasants that he tore from their homes, the only place that they knew as home, and he was cutting these down. So one night, Penelope, by the moonlight, runs from the castle walls, and the king sees from his balcony and yells for her to stop, and he sees her disappear in the meadow. On horseback with the guide, the king rides and tracks her. Through the night and the next day and then the next night, they look and look over the countryside for the Penelope, for he would not have this in his kingdom. He would not have such civil disobedience. But yet, one night, the guide, in his sleep, he hears the guide yell. The guide, he knows, is gone. He knows that he is out in the countryside alone. But yet he must find the Princess Penelope. So on the horseback he rides. Through the night, he sees her duck through meadows. He has tracked her. He goes after her. And just as this happens, the blackest of black clouds cover the moon. They shadow out the light. The storm is approaching. The worst storm in all the land, in all the history of the land. Pours and pours and pours upon the king's head. Pours and pours. He gets off the horse, for the mud is too steep for the king to ride. The horse, spooked by the lightning and the thunder, runs away from him. His kingly robes are torn. Through the meadow, he calls out for help, but he knows that even though he orders back the storm and commands it to stop, he knows there's no way out of this. So he sits in a cave for shelter, weeping over his deceit, weeping over his own evil deeds. Just as he calls out for help and calls out for Mother Nature to stop. For he will be good, he will be fine. He's a king. A snake, a serpent, a rattler crawls up the king in his resting place, bites him on the leg. The king knows that he is dying. Well, there you go, Miss Pitlick. I tried as best as I could. The difference between romanticism, realism, and naturalism is best explained in our own little fables. Romanticism through the wordiness, the beautifulness of words, the tragedy. Realism through the wrongdoings of society, through the poverty of the little girl. And naturalism through the ghastly Mother Nature and the king knowing, and only when he is to die, that he knows that he cannot control it. He cannot control nature or people. That's the end of my project. I'd like to give special credit to my cameraman men, Jason Snell and Eric Johnson. And of course, all the people that are employed at Donutland on Mount Vernon Road. Come on, girly girl. I want to go home and watch it.